Hi, this is Jack Spirko with another survival podcast video, and this video series is going to be multi-part because we're going to be making biltong in it, and biltong is simply a multi-day event. It's not something you do in one day. I'm going to work on it today with you guys. We've got some nice roasts. These were on sale for $1.99 at the store, so I bought 3 of them. They're about, what do I got here? 4.5 pounds a piece, so I've probably got about 12 to 15 pounds of meat I'm going to be doing today. I'm only going to do a little bit of it to show you how, because the process is the same. What we're going to be doing differently here, though, is I'm actually going to be making biltong using the Excalibur dehydrator. That's not going to come in today because today we're going to get the meat ready. It's going to sit overnight. The next day we'll do a video talking about the dehydrator, using the dehydrator, things we have to do differently with biltong and other things that might go into the dehydrator. But I'm going to do this for a couple of reasons. One, I'm doing biltong in general because you know what? I've been talking about this since I started the show 2.5 years ago. Everybody wants to try it. Everybody that tries it loves it. And people need confidence that it's not that hard to do. There are some videos on it in the Members Brigade. I'm going to put this stuff out on YouTube, though, for everybody. And we're going to do a little bit different, like, again, by doing it with the dehydrator. I'm also going to hang some up in my office the way I always do it without the dehydrator, compare the results. And I think what we'll see is the results will be identical, but one will take a hell of a lot less time than the other. The reason I'm doing it with the dehydrator is a couple things. One, I had a lot of listeners that live in very humid environments, but cool areas like Seattle and Portland, and they don't have air conditioning, so their houses are not dry, and they need some way to create the dry environment. This stuff is originally from South Africa. They make it in the winter during the dry season. It's so dry in that environment, you know, one of those places where you scratch yourself and it's healed in 2 days. Because of how dry it is. It just almost mummifies a wound, so it almost mummifies meat. And 2, because the guy that tried it with the Excalibur said that his neighbor, who's from South Africa, said it was the best biltong he ever ate. I take a South African's word on biltong. And last but not least, we're going to be doing a whole series of videos on ways to prepare meat using a dehydrator, because most things that I see about preserving meat with dehydration say not to do it. I disagree wholeheartedly. This will be the first one that I'll show you. Maybe we'll do some jerky. I'm going to show you how to dehydrate ground beef long term as well for use with trail foods. And there's many other things as I can figure out how to safely do with meat dehydration. So let's start out. What do we need to do? First we need to get our ingredients in order. Ingredients that we need. Coarse ground black pepper. You can buy it pre-ground. I like to grind it myself. This is a new mill I just got. It's made by a company called Vic Firth. It's probably the guy, his name. It said it was the last mill I would ever need to buy. I got tired of buying cheap pepper mills. This was $40. I know it's a lot to spend on a pepper mill, but hey, if they didn't lie to me, it'll be the last one I ever buy. If they did, I'm going to be asking them for a replacement. Ground coriander, you can grind this yourself. Pre-ground is fine with the coriander, though. You need salt. I have it in a little dish. I am using sea salt. It's coarser. You can use common table salt. I don't like to. It makes it way too easy to oversalt your meat. And you need some apple cider vinegar. Here I have some apple cider vinegar in a misting container. It doesn't have to be apple cider. It could be balsamic. It could be plain white. I'm sure in the traditional recipe in South Africa, they don't have a lot of apple cider in South Africa out on the plains with the Bushmen. So apple cider is something I picked up along the way. It's what I prefer to use. That's it. We also need some meat and a sharp knife. And since you're going to be doing a lot of cutting, it's probably a good idea to have a sharpening steel around. And we need the leanest cuts of meat we can find. Now I'm going to show you that this meat is not all lean. It's actually got quite a bit of fat on the back side of it. That's okay, we'll be trimming that off. Again, I just want to do a little bit today to show you what to do, how to do, and then I'll cut away with the camera and do the rest on my own. But what we want to do is, you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to reposition this so you can see it. I'm actually muscling this out. Give me a second to pause the camera. I'm going to focus down here so you guys can see what I'm doing, how I'm cutting this meat. Okay, the big thing with biltong is, unlike jerky, we're going to cut the meat thick. We're going to dehydrate it at very low temperatures, and it's almost going to be mummified when we're done. But whenever you deal with a large piece of meat, there's always muscle structure. And right here you can see one muscle group and another, and it's just separated. So the first thing you want to do with biltong, instead of starting to cut your meat right away, you want to, what I call, muscle it out. And I think that's the proper term for it. So we take a piece of muscle. Then we're going to go ahead and trim off a lot of the fat. And the pieces we end up with, we want as much fat off as possible. If you biltong fat or tallow, it tastes like candle wax, and not very good candle wax. So we're going to get up underneath that, they call that silver sheen. And again, a sharp knife is a must to do this right. You will lose a little meat. That's not a problem. There's lots of things you can do with some fatty meat. I'm going to be giving it to these dogs that are starting to show up around here. Blackie's joined us. He's off camera, but trust me, he's licking his lips. And I'm about to do something some of you guys are going to freak out about and go, you shouldn't do that. It makes the dog sick. Here's a piece, Blackie. Enjoy it. Where do you think dogs get their food in the wild? Do you think somebody cooks for them? All right, so not quite as defatted as it needs to be, but let's start talking about how to make your cuts with Biltong. I've got my grain going this way, so I want to go long grain, and I'm going to do a cut very, very thick for what you would think of for dehydrating meat, almost an inch thick there. This is going to reduce down to about half its size, though. So what I'm wanting to do is I want to make as close as I can as sticks. Look at that carbon steel Mora just go through that meat like nothing. Now, this is too big this way, so now what I need to do is I'm going to come here. All right. So, got this little piece making. That's going to be fine. One of the things I can do, this is a little bit thick, and it's the last piece, and it's not very long. So one of the things I can do, watch this. You just go in, leave a piece of your meat like this, and then open that up like that. And that way you get a longer stick. So that's what I want to do with the rest of my meat. Cut it down the middle. Got some fat on it. Cut that fat off. A little bit more of that cut there in the center. Open that up. All the fat you can possibly trim off, you want to trim off. Again, you're gonna lose a little bit of meat when you're trimming fat. There's no way around it. But again, that Max has joined us too. He's relaxing now. But you want thick. That's the key things. You want thick pieces of meat. You want about 1 inch to 3/4 of an inch by 1 inch for good traditional South African biltong. Again, it's going to shrink down. It's going to weigh next to nothing. You'll get some odd pieces. That's fine the way that is. Got enough to work with now on the camera. So I'm going to show you what you do with your meat. Let's say you got all your meat ready to go. Spread it out. Get your salt. And then sprinkle, actually, whoop, mistake. Got in a rush because I'm on camera. Get your vinegar and lightly mist your meat with vinegar. Both sides. This is just a light misting. For those of you that are freaked out, BPA plastic, you guys get a little bit eccentric with this, but this is BPA-free plastic that I have the vinegar in. I would always use BPA-free plastic using anything with an acid like vinegar in it. All right, now get your salt, and you want to get salt everywhere on the meat. You want to get it nicely coated. Think of it much more salted than, let's say, one of those big jumbo pretzels. Salt is your most important ingredient. Black pepper is nice for flavor, but was traditionally used to help keep flies off the meat because this was dried outside, hanging from a tree in the shade. Jerky traditionally made dried in the sun. Biltong traditionally thicker, dried in the shade. Biltong much superior to jerky. Good coating of salt. Flip it over. And I think a lot of you, I've talked to you guys about your biltong efforts. You're over-salting it. But you would be better off for storage purposes over-salting than under-salting. Once the curing process starts, you really can't go back and add more salt. I can't tell you how much to use per pound because I have no idea. I've been doing this by sight for a long time. Fortunately, my wife's not here to get mad at me for the salt that's flying onto the countertop. Normally, I mix it in the bowl straight away so the salt stays contained. But I wanted you to be able to see this. So there you go. Meat nicely salted. And again, I much prefer sea salt or kosher salt or any kind of a coarse salt. It's much easier to not over salt your meat, and it's much easier to control your salt. You don't end up dumping some on there and all of a sudden you poured out half a container without realizing it because it was so fine. Got it good and salted. Now we need to add black pepper. This is to taste. I like lots of it. Again, this mill, what's the guy's name? Vic Firth. I had a real hard time parting with the money on it. Now that I have it, I believe their advertisement. This may be the last pepper mill I ever have to buy. Nothing annoys me more than a pepper mill when it craps out. Flip it over. You see, it is quite salty, but it's not caked. It's not caked with salt. Good amount of black pepper. All right. Just pat it in. Ground coriander. You got to be careful here. You don't want to overdo your coriander. It's a strong flavored spice. It is a traditional ingredient in this type of in biltong. It's not biltong without these ingredients, these four. Anything else you want to add to it is for flavor and ego and your own customization only. This is traditional South African biltong by the book. Original person I got the recipe from. Great writer that spent a lot of years in Africa as a professional hunter named Peter Hathaway Capstick. The man will always be special to me because of biltong. And that's it. That's all we do for day one. We get a nice glass bowl. We put our meat in there, and I'll just keep doing that. And as I'm adding more meat, you just kind of knead it around, get it all mixed up. It can, so I'll keep going through here. Let me pull the camera back so I can finish up with you on what we're doing for the rest of today. So what I've got now, again, I've got my meat all in my glass bowl. I've got about 14 pounds of it to go through and do the same thing with. It'll take a while. I'll keep the stuff here on the cutting board and just keep rolling my meat in it as I go until I'm finished. Then I will take this bowl and I will put it in the refrigerator overnight. Obviously, they weren't able to do that out on the plains, but from Mr. Capstick's recipe, it's the way he's always recommended to do it. I've always gotten good results with it. Again, I am going to string some of this up. Simply the way I've always done this, you get a paper clip, open it up like an S-hook, put it through the meat, and hang it from string, and hang it so the meat doesn't, you don't want the meat hanging like this. You want it not touching each other. I'll hang about 10% of this batch in my office, and we'll compare the way the two versions come out. And I think you'll see that unless you live in a humid area, the dehydrator is not necessary, but I bet you it really speeds up the process. With that, hold on for Chapter 2 in this little project. And this has been Jack Spirko with another Survival Podcast video.